Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Nyimas Hikmah Ramadina and I'm from 5BB class. I will explain to you about types of variable in research. There are some types of variable in research, but at this time I will tell only about dependent and independent variables. Here is the contents I will explain about. First one is definition of variable. And the second one is dependent variables and independent variables. Next is relationship between dependent and independent variable. And the last one is the importance of dependent and independent variables. Let's start from the first content. Talk about types of variable. Let's think first, what is variable? According to Creswell, a variable is a characteristic or attribute of an individual or an organization that researchers can measure or observe, and varies among individuals or organizations studied. Measurement means that the researcher records information from individuals by asking them to answer questions. And when variables vary, it means that scores will assume different values depending on the type of variables being measured. Let's continue to next content. We will discuss about dependent and independent variable. So let's start with independent variable first. According to Creswell, an independent variable is an attribute or characteristic that influences or affects an outcome or dependent variable. An independent variable is the input variable which causes, in part in total, a particular outcome. It is a stimulus that influences a response, an antecedent or a factor which may be modified to affect an outcome. In conclusion, independent variable is the cause of other variable. Two examples of common independent variables are gender and educational level. Let's move to the other one. According to Creswell, a dependent variable is an attribute or characteristic that is dependent on or influenced by the independent variable. This is the effect of independent variable. This variable was not manipulated by the researchers, but it was affected by the independent variable. An example of an independent variable is depression symptoms, which depend on the independent variable. Let's move to the next topic. Independent variable causes a change in independent variable, and that is not possible that a dependent variable could cause a change in a dependent variable. For example, time spent studying causes a change in test score, and it is not possible that the test scores could cause a change in time spent studying. Therefore, time spent studying must be the independent variable and test score must be the dependent variable because the sentence doesn't make sense the other way around. The other relationship can be traced from its terms independent and dependent, referring to the relationship between these two types of variables. The terms have meaning only with respect to each other. In case of the dependent variable, its value or behavior is considered brilliant to an extent upon the value of the independent variable, but not the other way around. That is why it is considered dependent. The independent variable, on the other hand, is truly independent from the dependent variable. Its value does not change according to the value of the dependent variable. Let's meet the last topic of this discussion, the importance of dependent and independent variable. First one is it is guide the researchers to pursue their studies with maximum curiosity. Dependent and independent variables are important because it drives the research process too. Dependent and independent variables are important because as defined earlier, a variable as opposed to a constant is simply anything that can vary and that many researchers consistently look at the relationship between these two variables. While while the variation of an independent variable will influence the variation of dependent variable, both variables give the study a focus. If we were to study the effects of work experience on college performance, we might look at the grades of students who have worked prior to starting college and the grades of students who did not work prior to starting college. In this study, you may notice that both groups are students, so student status remains constant between the two groups. You may also notice that work experience is not the same between the two groups. Therefore, work experience varies and is considered a variable. If we choose students for each group who are of similar age or similar background, we are holding these aspects constant and therefore they too will not vary within our study. Dependent and independent variables are also important because they determine the cause and effects in research. Although not all independent and dependent variables are causal related variables, the notion of cause and effects can help clarify the idea of independence in the independent variable and dependence in the dependent variable. In the studying and scores examples, cause effects is fairly obvious, and therefore it is relatively easy to understand what the independent dependent variables are. This is summary that you can see from all our topic that I have explained it before. I think that's enough data for me. I wish this lesson can be useful for us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.